First this morning, Republican primary voters head to the polls in Michigan and Arizona today to cast ballots for the president. The Michigan race in particular could be decisive. Fox 26's Ford Atkinson is live right now in our newsroom with our panel of political experts. Good morning to you, Ford.
Hey, good morning, Melissa. You know, Michigan is huge because Mitt Romney calls it his home state, yet Rick Santorum is running neck and neck with him in the polls. Now, we're going to talk about Michigan and the date of the Texas primary with our panel of political experts, Jim McGrath, Lance Roberts, and Mustafa Tamiz. Guys, you know, let's start out. Let me get your predictions on Michigan, because that could make or break the race for Mitt Romney in particular. Jim, let's start with you. Who wins?
I'm going to say Santorum wins. I think union votes are coming into play. The Democrats have spent about $250,000 advertising against Mitt Romney. I think Santorum's going to sneak past him here.
Yeah, the Democrats would love to see Rick Santorum beat Mitt Romney in his home state.
They would for sure.
Lance, how about you?
Well, I don't know. I agree with a lot of what he just said. I mean, it is Mitt Romney's home state. He's got good momentum going in, so I think it's really kind of a toss-up here.
All right,
it's real close.
Every time we guess something, it's the opposite.
That's why I went Santorum.
but I do want to say that the Rick Santorum, not only the Democrats are spending money, but he himself did a robo-dial calling Democrats asking for their support. So it's a unique primary.
Okay. Now let's say Rick Santorum wins the Michigan primary. Jim, what does this do to the Republican presidential race?
I support Mitt Romney, so I'm going to tell you it does absolutely nothing. Mitt Romney is cruising to victory in Arizona. That's 29 votes, winner take all. Michigan is proportional delegate apportionment, so whether he wins by 1 vote, loses by 1 vote, won't change the number of delegates he gets materially. It's all about media expectations, and in 3 days the media will be on to something else. So I don't think it has a material impact. Okay,
Mustafa, you buy that?
No, I don't think he's cruising. I don't think he's sailing. I think he's bumping along. So far, Santorum has won more states than any other candidate, and going into Michigan, we can have an odd thing. Majority of the votes can go to Mitt Romney, and Santorum might win the number of delegates counts. So, both may stand on election night claiming that they won Michigan, which would, again, for this primary, it would be usual.
All right, Lance, this primary, actually the entire election was supposed to be about economics, about the economy. Rick Santorum is making at least partially about social issues. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when this comes down to the final run, as we go into the actual election, it will be about the economy. I mean, if you go back and look at George W. Bush, Walker Bush, when he ran for president, it was about the economy, stupid, and that is what this is going to eventually come back down to. Rising gas prices is going to reflect into a weaker economy in the next couple of quarters. That's going to really start to impact discretionary incomes, which have already fallen over the last 2 years. So it will come down to the voter when they go to the poll about what they feel in their pocketbook.
Jim, I see all the time, I read all the time, articles and comments from political pundits on the national level. They all say this goes on any longer, the Republicans are going to destroy themselves, they're not going to be able to coalesce against Obama in the fall. Do you buy that?
No, I don't buy that. I think once we do have a nominee, whenever that is, even if it's in Tampa, the Republican Party will come together, because the one thing they care about more than who becomes their nominee is beating Barack Obama. So I think that's the galvanizing, unifying force that we'll find in the fall.
All right, just real quickly, Mustafa, you have some news for us about the possibility that the Texas primary election might actually be set later this week. What do you know?
Well, the San Antonio judges basically yesterday went to both of the parties, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and they asked them to put in a brief that goes through the deadlines of what it would take to get the election to be end of May. So it looks like they're asking for certain very specific information, and if that information comes through, we may see a primary at the end of May, and then it put Texas in a real play, because of the over 152 delegates that Texas has will be up for grabs for both, probably Santorum and Mitt Romney.
Yeah, and I'm sure Texas Republican voters are tired of sitting on the sidelines. They'd like to get involved. Originally, the primary date would have been next Tuesday. We'll just have to wait and see. I guess if Mitt Romney You may not agree with this, but Mustafa would say so. If Mitt Romney loses today in Michigan, it's probably more likely Texas voters will have a major impact.
And you're likely to see lots of money on Texas televisions talking about the campaigns.
Alrighty. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll be back at 8 o'clock to talk about more political issues. We'll talk about some international items as well, but we'll see you at 8 o'clock.
Right.
You know, there is a very good chance that the Texas primary will now be held on May 29th. We want to talk about that with our political and economic experts this morning, Jim McGrath, Lance Roberts, Mustafa Tamiz, and Jim Slaymaker, the publisher of Energy Magazine. First of all, we want to get to the Texas primary, Mustafa. What is the court, do you think, likely to do perhaps as early as this week?
Well, I think by Thursday or Friday, we're likely to have the congressional maps and the state house maps. But more importantly, we're likely to have a date when the election will actually happen.
And you think that's going to be May 29th?
Yes, that's the date that's been discussed, and both parties have agreed to it. I think the judge is going to kind of fast track this so that we actually have an election.
Okay, let me ask you all here three real quickly. Jim, what do you think is going to happen in that Texas primary? Is it going to be relevant, really relevant, or not?
I think it is going to be relevant. I think the way the delegates are being portioned out, slower process in this election cycle than we've ever had in a presidential primary on the Republican side, it's going to be relevant.
Okay, Jim, you think the race is going to go on and on and on then? How about you, Lance?
I tend to agree. It's going to be relevant, but Ohio's still going to be the big one.
Okay, that's on Super Tuesday, a week from today. Right. Mustafa, is the race going to be over by the Texas primary?
Absolutely not. I mean, Texas got 22 media markets, and a lot of money is going to be spent getting Texas voters and getting their support.
Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, for me, you mean Rick? For me,
Rick, excuse me.
I would say that the primary is certainly a hot one right now, and it's going to be contested in Texas. I mean, Mitt Romney's been here probably 20 times. Newt's been here probably 15 times. So it looks like it's contested right now. I can't see why they wouldn't keep coming if it wasn't.
Now, the focus, of course, has been, this race has been on the domestic issue, the economy, but there's a lot going on overseas, particularly in the Middle East. You've got, are there nuclear weapons in Iraq, rather in Iran coming soon? You've got the Afghanistan Koran burning. You've got the unrest in Syria. All sorts of things going on. Is this resonating, Jim, with Republican voters right now?
I think of the scenarios that you've presented, I think the situation in Afghanistan is probably the most likely to penetrate through and get into the minds of Republican primary voters. American servicemen were killed. What's happening in Syria is tragic. What's going on in Iran is also very serious. But American servicemen died. That gets to Republican primary voters, not what is happening on the ground in Syria.
Mustafa, several or at least a couple of the Republican candidates have criticized President Obama for apologizing for that NATO Koran burning. Did the president make a mistake?
Well, I think what the president's looking at from a national security standpoint is how do you diffuse these situations from getting worse and from starting to see these impact having around the world. So although the apology may not have been politically in his favor, from a national security standpoint, it's important to quail down these, these uprisings.
Lance, was an apology appropriate?
Well, again, I was going to say that while I agree with what he said, that I think these issues in Iran and Syria are important, I think the real ones that are going to resonate with voters is going to be the economy. You've got 1 in 3 homeowners that are underwater, seriously delinquent, potentially facing foreclosure. You've got 46 million Americans on food stamps, 86 million people out of work. You know, I think when this comes down to it, it's going to come back to it's basically the economy.
Rick, anytime we talk about the Middle East and the unrest there, you got to think about oil prices and how it impacts us here. Have we seen any impact yet from what's going on in the last few weeks there, and what do you think is going to happen in the near future?
Well, the Middle East, what's going on in the Middle East impacts oil prices all the time. Not just now, not just last few weeks, but it's come to the forefront because the news has picked it up because the prices of gasoline are higher. So yes, it's very important. And to touch on what these gentlemen are saying is the situation in the Middle East impacts us because world oil is world oil. It's a world market, so it affects us locally.
All right, gasoline prices have gone up, Rick, and boy, they're talking about $5 a gallon, $6 a gallon before November. First of all, from your perspective, is that a likely scenario?
It's already $6 a gallon in Florida. It's going to be that way probably in another few weeks in California. Just look at it. It's happening already.
Yeah. And
how about you, Lance?
Well, exactly. I wrote back in November on our blog that oil prices were already at $100 a barrel, but gas prices were still close to $3 a gallon on a nationwide basis. And I said back then it was only a function of time until gas prices caught up with oil prices. The longer that oil prices remain sustained over $100 a barrel, gas prices will rise as a function of that. And while gas prices are being driven by speculation, a lot of that in this case right now because of all the liquidity issues from the ECB, the LTROs, what the Fed's doing by pumping liquidity in the system, that's pushing oil prices higher because of the commodity contracts. That's going to continue to elevate gas prices.
All right, we've got less than a minute, Mustafa. Can the president, the incumbent president, get reelected if gas prices are $6 a gallon, maybe even higher?
Well, this has been an unusual election, right? So if you look at all the barometers, whether it's unemployment rate, whether it's GDP, all of those things aren't favorable to Barack Obama. But at the same time, the Republican primary is dragging on. There doesn't seem to be a consensus. 55% of Republican primary voters want someone else. That's certainly not going to help going into the general election. But I think that the bigger issue is that right now the world is in a very precarious situation. Middle East, 56% of the world oil reserves sit in Middle East. This uncertainty is driving not only oil prices, it's driving this uneasiness amongst Americans, and we hope that this becomes a.
We're running out of time, but I just want to give Jim a crack at that.
Let me give you a very technical answer. The president cannot be reelected with gas at $6 a gallon. That is going to tank this economy. You've got so many folks out of work, stubborn unemployment numbers. I don't think he can get there.
All right, gentlemen, appreciate it. Thanks a lot. We'll see what happens. Michigan today, also Arizona, and then Super Tuesday next Tuesday, and we'll see about the Texas primary perhaps in May. Back to you. Judge for yourself whether Obama, Santorum, or Romney are hurting themselves by taking attention away from economic issues. If they are, will it really hurt their chances? It may be in the eye or the ear of the beholder. I think, Mike, you and the panel have some other political issues to discuss.
We do, Ford. We have assembled here the best and the smartest and brightest minds that we can to cover some very important campaign issues. We're talking about oil and gas prices. You probably noticed you're paying more at the pump. Here in Houston, the average is $3.55 a gallon. President Obama recently rejected construction of the Keystone Pipeline, which many believe could have brought those prices down. Now he has another interesting solution.
You got a bunch of algae out here, right? If we can figure out how to make energy out of that, we'll be doing all right. Believe it or not, we could replace up to 17% of the oil we import for transportation with this fuel that we can grow right here in the United States.
Well, if that turns out to be true, then we're in good shape. Like I said, we've assembled some of the experts in their field to come and keep an eye on your money. And to give you an idea of what to expect, we're joined by Rick Slaymaker. He's the publisher of Energy Magazine. You know Mustafa Tamiz. He's a regular contributor, international affairs and political expert, economic and market expert Lance Roberts, and Jim McGrath, who served under President George H.W. Bush. Great to have you all with us. And Rick, I want to begin with you, since you are the authority on energy. Is it realistic? We just heard President Obama say that this algae, which from my understanding can convert, can produce biofuels, can replace 17% of our supply of petroleum. Is that true? Is that realistic?
Well, it depends on the time period. I mean, not in the short term, but the $44 million that he pledged as sort of a grant to study this is a good thing. I mean, it's a seed money. ExxonMobil is doing something right now that they did, they started a couple of years ago. If it meets the certain milestones they have, they're going to put about $600 million in it. So what it does, it produces biodiesel, and that will help the transportation industry, but it's a long way off.
So the oil companies are not against this?
No, they're supporting it and working on it.
Well, that's good to hear. I want to go to Lance right now because I sort of bounced something off of Lance a few moments ago, and I'd like to share it with you. And it has to do with President Obama's approval rating has been improving fairly well this year, you may have noticed. it has correlated almost exactly with the rise in the stock market.
Right.
It seems like people are happy that their retirement accounts are getting bigger, and it's offsetting any anger they have over the price of gas.
Well, not just that. It's just the rising, the rising stock market certainly helps. And then, of course, we have seen jobs improve over the last couple of months, which, again, we're talking about minor improvements off a very depressed level. So, but it is better. And that is giving people a little bit more confidence because they read the headlines. You know, we talk about it here. They read it in the Wall Street Journal. They read it in the Houston Chronicle, wherever they're reading it. They're reading those headlines and say, oh, well, things are getting better. So when they're polled for things that's like, is the president doing a better job? Well, he must be because the headlines say that things are getting better. But the real question is when you look at the reality of the economy, 46 million people basically on food stamps, 1 in 4 underwater on their mortgages. There's still a lot of damage to the economy, which I think is going to come back very importantly to play later on this year before the election.
Well, let's talk about that with Mustafa and Jim. Mustafa, I want to start with you. If the economy does falter, obviously, it would seem that the approval rating of President Obama might go down, but have the Republicans done so much damage to themselves with the negative campaigning that they may not be able to move in and seize that opportunity?
Well, I think we see this in every election cycle, that the primaries become contentious. In this cycle, the primaries have been unbelievably contentious, and it's a lot of the super PAC money that's gone in that's used virtually to attack your opponent. And so millions of dollars go in at the last minute to attack your opponent, and that's impacting the Republican base, but it is having a significant impact amongst the independents. And elections are won and lost not by your base supporting you, but also the persuading independents to come out and vote. And so this is going to be a challenge for them.
And that brings me to you, Jim, because you worked for President Bush 41, and in his re-election campaign, the most famous phrase probably ever in politics was uttered on the Clinton side, and that was, "It's the economy, stupid."
Oh, yeah.
If the economy falters towards the end of a president's administration or term, what impact does that have on the re-electability?
Oh, it has a substantial and depressing impact on their prospects for re-election. I mean, we saw that. You had to mention 1992. My psychotherapist says I can't talk about 1992.
We'll put you in contact with Mary Jo Rapini.
Please. I saw her good work earlier. But no, it has a material impact. I mean, people do vote their wallet books. It's a cliche, but it's also true. And so when you look at $6 gas in Florida, key swing state, that is going to be a mountain for Barack Obama to climb going forward.
Okay, we have just a few seconds left. I want to give each of you an opportunity. If you could summarize, let's say in one phrase, what is the key thing to watch between now and November for whether or not the election could swing for the Republicans or the Democrats? Is there one thing that sticks out in your mind, Rick?
Yes, it's the economy, stupid.
Okay, good. Mustafa?
I would look at the consumer price index, because consumer confidence is going to tell how people actually feel.
Okay, yeah, if they're feeling the pain in their wallet. Lance?
Incomes and employment.
Okay, good. And Jim?
I'll take a political metric. How about independent voters in states like Ohio and Florida?
I'm with you. I'm kind of with Jim on this one. I think those independents, that's going to swing the election one way or another, and the negative campaigning might turn out to I don't know, get them in the end with the Republicans. I don't know. That's my opinion, But they know a lot more about this stuff than I do. All right, Melissa, we're trying to keep an eye on not only the political situation in the U.S., but the folks at home and their pocketbooks, and hopefully everything will turn out well.
Yes, we'll be anxious to see what happens tonight. It may tell a whole lot, and you can watch the very latest and get those results on Fox 26 News at 9 o'clock tonight.